Hey, shy people, what is your worst experience? I was in a group therapy session as a kid, like maybe 14. I really had to go to the bathroom, but we weren't allowed to during the session. I was sort of balled up in the center of the room, not like emotional or anything, just sitting comfortably, hugging my knees because all the spots on the couch were taken. Some girl had just finished telling a story of her mistreatment. She was crying and there was no other sound. It was sort of that awkward but respectful silence that fills a space when you want to be supportive, but saying anything at all would somehow seem inconsiderate. It was into this yawning void that I farted. I knew it was coming. I'd been staving off the gurgling in my stomach for some time now. I'd broken into a sweat already with the sheer effort of will to delay the inevitable. It was no use. I tried to discreetly shift my weight and maybe muffle the sound. I failed. This was neither silent nor dangerous. It effortlessly shattered the silence like sledgehammer versus a Christmas ornament. Another moment of silence swallowed the sound, but it was a void of disbelief. Then some kid yelled as loud as they could, "Jen farted!" And the entire room collapsed into helpless laughter, while I promptly turned to stone and cringed on the spot. Well, kinda hopefully it gave the crying girl a giggle too. Story 2. Being told to lower your voice and shut up as a child, then as a teen, being told to speak up more for myself and answer when I'm asked something, then growing up never speaking unless spoken to or in case of emergency. As a shy girl, I only talked when my friends did. I also didn't go to my teacher when I accidentally hurt my thumb for a class project. Since I was trying my best to be quiet and not disturb anyone, I realized no one noticed I hurt my thumb. So after recovering from almost fainting, I walked up to the teacher so I wouldn't bother anyone else and asked her if she had a first aid kit. She said, "Of course, why? Did you hurt yourself?" And I just showed her my thumb and said, "Kinda." She was shocked I hadn't screamed or said anything for a good 10 minutes and immediately set off to get the first aid and help me dress my injury. She knew I was quiet and shy, though I think it surprised her to realize to what extent. I figured I needed some help and I absolutely had to ask because my tiny first aid kit was only meant for paper cuts and small scrapes. Long story short, I was too shy to draw attention to my pain and had to gather the courage and breath to ask for assistance. Story 3. Me being me, I was up late as hell, bored, and to cure my boredom, I decided to mess around with a chemistry set that I had in my room from years ago. I'm a chemistry student, so I just thought I'd test the pH of the random soaps and washes. Well, I went through and smoothly tested some stuff, and all was well. But when I was cleaning the test tube, I fumbled it because of the salicylic acid that was on the outside, and basically tried to stop it from falling by pushing it against the side of the sink. Well, I basically just smashed a glass test tube with my fingertips, and my only reaction was I quietly muttered, "Oh." Then I quietly scampered around the bathroom looking for first aid supplies. Now, mind you, it's about 2 a.m. I then wash out the wound, sit down, wait, and then dress it. After that, I said to myself, well, that's embarrassing. Then I took the logical course of action and instead of waking up my dad, just went to bed. The first thing I said to my dad the next morning was, "Sleep well?" Story 4. In high school biology, we were doing frog experiments. I got put in a group with a bunch of boys who kept teasing me the whole time. I was the only girl. They made me go clean out the tray at the end of class, and there was a long line because there was one sink in the back of the classroom. Because I was in a group of idiots who would rather goof off, I was the only girl in a group full of boys who acted like frat boys. I was last in line. The boy in front of me kept trying to chat me up. I responded tersely because he had this smug look on his face. He kept looking back at me and washed his tray and instruments very slowly. As soon as he's done, the bell rings, and the teacher said no one can leave until I finish cleaning my tray. She saw the kid in front of me, by the way. She was still punishing me for I don't know what reason. Everyone predictably started screaming at me to hurry up. I ended up bawling while cleaning as fast as I could. Boys in the back of the room started laughing at me. I turned to the teacher, face full of tears, and begged her to let the class go. I would stay as long as it took to get it done. She crossed her arms and smirked at me. I managed to finish quickly, but I was still sobbing on the way out. I ended up being 1 minute late to the next class, but thankfully that teacher didn't punish me. She saw I was in tears and asked what happened. I was blubbering too much to make any sense at all, so she gave me a mini Zen garden to play with outside and told me to calm down as long as I needed to. A week later, my friend told me she had girls from my class talking smack about me and saying it was embarrassing that I cried. She told them to shut up. Weirdly enough, that teacher was nice to me for the rest of the semester, and I even got an A in the class. She asked me to join the science club. She was the club advisor in the following years and always smiled when she saw me. I have no idea what happened or why she treated me like that. I did end up being able to articulate what happened for my next period teacher after that witches class. That teacher had several decades of seniority, so it's possible she complained to the administration and got that teacher in hot water or something, which is why she was nicer. However, I wouldn't know for sure. Story 5. First one, in Spanish class when I was 13, first day of school, the teacher said in my language, "So I'm tired of you all kids being embarrassed to speak in front of each other. So let's get embarrassed directly, now properly, all of us equally." She then started with me because I had a Spanish name. I'm French with Spanish origins, but no one speaks Spanish in my family. Made me pick a piece of paper and I had to do what's on it, introducing myself in Spanish like a rapper in front of everyone. I was shy, hated rap music. I was more into vintage songs, even classical. Not popular, and I can't even sing a lullaby. I hated that teacher. Second one, I was 11 and had my periods. We had to go to the pool for PE classes, but my mother refused to let me skip it, even if I had never succeeded with tampons, only pads. Period stops in water, she said. And it worked, but we spent most of our time there out of water, hearing instructions or waiting in line for the diving board. When it was my turn, I arrived on the diving board, 6 meters, and stopped because I was a bit scared for like 10 seconds. Enough to let everyone see red liquid on my leg. It was gross for others and embarrassing for me because the entire middle school was talking about it for weeks. Story 6. I was forced to join the debate team back in high school. I was in a cross-examination debate where a pair of students debated another pair. We were on the defense for my very first debate, so our role was to oppose the other team's proposal. So when I went up to give the first rebuttal, I froze, literally didn't say a word. I just stared at the judge and I couldn't even think about what to say. The judge said to relax and just think of what the other team said and come up with anything that could be used to oppose them. I still drew blanks. After the allotted time expired, the other team had to question my rebuttal, to which the guy only asked one question. Do you understand our plan? Until this day, that's still the most embarrassing thing that has ever happened to me. Thankfully, other debates went well enough. Story 7. I was very small for my age and had a similar experience in 5th grade. I liked having long hair and it grew in big golden ringlets that hung down to my shoulders. All the moms thought I was adorable and couldn't keep their hands off. There would be at least always one wanting to touch my hair. They'd run their fingers through it and say, "Look at those curls," or "Look how they shine in the sun," or "The girls must be so jealous," and so on. I just wanted to be left alone, but they couldn't help themselves apparently. It was very annoying. The worst, though, was a day we had a guest speaker who wanted to interact with the students. So he started off by asking questions. I put my hand up along with some other kids, and the man said, "Yes, in the front, the pretty little girl with the yellow curls." Everyone laughed, and I had to start my answer with, "First, I'm a boy." Ouch! Got me there, and in front of a guest speaker, too, in front of all those people. That's a big oof moment. Story 8. When I was 18, I took care of myself as far as my body and looks. At the time, I used to work at a smoke shop. The most sold items were cigarettes and were all pretty much only $1 anyway. One day, we had nothing but dollars, around $100 plus in just $1 bills, so when I got my pay, which was $80 for the whole day, I paid myself in $1 bills. I left work and decided to stop by a PLS, a cash store, and get change, at least $20 bills or so. For some apparent reason, nothing but women were working that day. Anyways, the lady who attended to me literally counted the money, which I had no problem with since I already expected it. She then randomly asked, "Why so many $1 bills? Are you like a male dancer?" And she had the audacity to shout to her coworkers, "Hey y'all, he's a dancer." And at this point, I'm nervous as heck, sweating, eyes a bit watery, yet I was laughing it off like nothing, but truly cringing inside. A lot of the girls were all like, "OMG, you should like dance for us," or "How much do you charge for parties?" Hell, even one girl asked, "How much for a private dance?" I just said no. I work at a smoke shop. That's it, nothing more. Got my money and left. Never went back to that place ever again. Story 9. My first job interview when I was 16 was a car crash. I applied for an apprenticeship and was told my interview was at the start of the very next day, and I didn't even have a CV, a resume at the time. I get to the interview with my freshly made CV that I had finished writing 2 minutes earlier. "So, tell me about yourself," followed by my stumbling on my words for 30 seconds before the interviewer told me it was clear I hadn't had a chance to prepare and we'd redo it in a week. Cut to 1 week later, I've actually had a chance to practice interview skills with a few people. Get in, she starts with the same question, and I recite what I had practiced. The interviewer has a go at me because I sounded really rehearsed, I'm not making eye contact, and that I didn't answer her question well enough. 30 more seconds of stumbling out parts of words later, she basically tells me to leave and that I am not suitable. Honestly, one of the absolute worst experiences of my entire life. 2 years later, I had an interview for an apprenticeship at an engineering company, and it went so much better as the interviewer didn't go out of their way to be a schmuck to a teenager. 5 years later, I still wouldn't know how to respond to "tell me about yourself" and can't properly hold eye contact with anyone, including close friends and family. Story 10. When I was 16, I ended up at this house party with some very off-color older people in a situation that was definitely classified as exactly where my parents would not approve of me being. Of course, being 16 in a small town craving excitement, I stayed. Even when the man who owned the house got in a screaming match with his girlfriend because she had used his car to pick up substances from another guy, I stayed for some reason. So she left, screaming at him and him screaming at her as she stormed out of the yard. And the party, it was like 8 people, including my ex-boyfriend, which is probably why I stayed, sat around the fire pit while he ranted about her. To explain the shy part of this, I had a habit back then of hanging out with people and just saying nothing the entire time. Sometimes I can still be that way, even though I'm 25 now. It usually flares up the worst when people make me uncomfortable, like at this party. So I had said literally nothing the entire evening. This guy goes off to the group about his girlfriend, all like, "She comes in here running her damn mouth like she has a right to talk to me like that. Why can't she be like this chick?" He motions to me. Sits there pretty and hasn't said a damn thing all night, doesn't open her mouth and start things, just sit and shut up. And it made me feel so horrible about myself that I've honestly never forgotten it. Because even when he said that and it made me mad and left me feeling so stupid, I was too shy to say anything back. Story 11. I have a stutter. It was probably at its worst in high school, so just speaking in public was a horrible event. You add this to the generalized and social anxiety, and every day in school was a nightmare. I would usually know every single answer, but refused to speak an answer. I was always very proficient in math, so when it came to quizzes and tests, I'd usually end up nailing them. This one time, my test score was over 100. That was because there was a question in the test that wasn't supposed to be extra points, but the instructor decided to treat it as such after everyone in the class got the answer wrong. Everyone but me. So on the test review day, he calls me up in front of class to describe and explain to everyone how I solved it. I think at one point I was shaking, sweating, and stuttering all at the same time. So sometime after that, the school decided to take me to a special class once or twice a week to have a one-on-one with a speech doctor, professor, teacher, can't remember her qualification. She had me practice strategic breathing techniques and other things to help me relax when speaking. So something good came out of it, but it was a nightmare. I bet every single person in that class that day with a shred of empathy was quietly begging the teacher, it was high school, to just let me off. Hold up, a test score over 100? That's like winning the math lottery. Too bad the prize was a public speaking lesson and session in front of the class. Story 12. Being pestered by 3 girls and then being punished for it because 10-year-old me was a big, strong man against 3 dainty little flowers twice my size and strength. Then spending the rest of middle school being pestered constantly for attempting to defend myself, even though I didn't have a chance in hell at getting them to stop. I ended up having to write each of them a letter of apology, and none of them got so much as a slap on the wrist. Second to that was when the school administration found out that I was the only kid in the whole school district with Tourette's syndrome, so they made me go on stage in the auditorium in front of an assembly of the entire school to explain what Tourette's syndrome is and why it's not okay to make fun of me for it. I really didn't want to do that, but they told me I'd be suspended if I didn't. Special education schools were a fun place in the late 80s and early 90s. I have plenty more messed up stories where these ones came from. Story 13. I was 24 and hung out a couple of nights a week at a local bar to play pool and listen to the karaoke singers. One night, there was a woman there who was maybe a couple of years older than me, who was celebrating her birthday. Guys had been buying her drinks all night, and she starts getting flirty with me. I'm the only one she gets this way with all night. We actually sat and talked for a while, and she seemed like she might be genuinely interested in me. I decided, though, to not make any kind of move because I didn't want it to look like I was trying to take advantage of her condition. So we just talk, and eventually one of her friends takes her home. A couple days later, I return, and she's there again. Convinced that she would be interested, I went over to talk to her. While talking, she thanks me for being so good the other night. I psyched myself up to ask her out. Up until this point, I had only ever been turned down when I've done so. But here I am, convinced that it'll turn out differently. It doesn't. She explains that she was only being flirty because she was intoxicated and wanted to get the other men in the bar to leave her alone. I looked like a nice guy that she could just sit with, and that would make any advances as all the others had, but she's not actually interested. So yeah, my worst moment was hearing the only woman to show interest in me say that it was only because she was intoxicated. It was crushing, and I haven't asked a woman out since. This was in 2006. Story 14. LOL. One time I was walking down the street and I came upon an old classmate of mine. Just standing by at a distance were a chatty, boisterous group of boys about 5 or 6 or 7. As we talked, she suddenly said, "Come, let me introduce you to my friends." My ears pricked up. I had no idea she knew them or was with them. As I walked over to say hello, alarmed and extremely self-conscious, I began to feel the symptoms coming. My knees quivered as I stood in front of them. My voice trembled as I said hello. My palms began to sweat furiously and my smiles felt so plastic. I was so self-conscious in spite of the fact that there was nothing particularly distinct or unusual about me. But the meet and greet finally ended and I took my leave, thank God. Well, not so fast. I hadn't walked too far away from them and my super speed brain had already begun processing and rethinking and recapping the last few minutes when I overheard one of the guys say to my friend, "Damn, why were his legs shaking like that?" At that point, I literally just wanted to dig the ground 36 feet and go in there and cover it up and never come out. He noticed. They noticed my anxiety. I felt their eyes on my back as I walked away in hot shame, and I really just wanted to cringe. I still cringe so hard when I remember that incident. Sometimes I feel so stupid about it because, like, why was I anxious in front of a group of boys my age? Was it because they were unfamiliar? Anyway, that was the day I discovered that I'm not just shy, I have moderate to severe social anxiety disorder. Story 15. There are so many. Where can I even begin? Since a lot of people are writing about their childhood, I might as well too. I was so shy that I was afraid to talk to anyone. This made it particularly difficult the times when I had to go to the bathroom in the middle of class because I was too shy to raise my hand and ask the teacher. This, coupled with my fear of going to the bathroom in public, made for a bad combination. My daily routine would involve me going to the bathroom right before I left for school, not drinking anything all day so I wouldn't have to go while in school, and if I did, I would hold it until I got home again. Well, one day I couldn't hold it, and of course, being extremely shy, I also couldn't say anything to the teacher. So there I went, and a small puddle started forming beneath my little chair. It must have been pretty disgusting. Luckily, it was only about 20 minutes before school ended. I started crying uncontrollably, and the teacher made the girl next to me clean it up. I feel bad about that to this day. Oh, and this happened twice? Because of incidents like these, I got voted the shyest person in my junior high school yearbook. This may have been the worst thing to happen to me, but also the best, because it was so humiliating that it forced me to get out of my shell in high school. It took a lot of work, but I did it, and while I still consider myself an introvert, I am no longer to the point where I can't function in life. And if you're learning a thing or two or relating to one of these stories at the very least so far, please don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 16. Mine was when I was 10. My mother and I were in AC Moore looking for candles. Noticing a rack full of sketchbooks, I separated from my mother, thinking she was close, but she was not. Turning my head in all directions, she was nowhere to be found. I put the sketchbook I had in my hands back on the shelf and grabbed a bigger one and decided that was the one I wanted. As I go to look for my mom, a woman who is obviously mentally handicapped shoves her hand in my face and starts petting me on my face, mind you. After, I screamed and the woman's father came over and apologized, explaining that she was mentally challenged. Grabbing her by the arm, her father told her to stop scaring me and to leave her hands to herself. The woman told her father that I was a pretty girl. Feeling even more horrified, I backed away multiple steps. A moment later, my mom came up and asked if I was okay. I told her I was, but inside I was still terrified. The handicapped woman had to have been in her late 20s, early 30s, and my mom told them that it was okay and that the woman wasn't trying to hurt me. As a child, I was very shy and I have Asperger's autism. Rarely did I talk. Almost everything scared me, but this memory still freaks me out, even though I know the lady didn't really know any better. Despite all that happening, I was happy with my sketchbook and my mom ended up buying 2 sketchbooks for me. My mom was my hero then and still is now. Story 17. I started taking piano lessons in high school. I have terrible anxiety and I hate crowds. A couple of times a year, my piano teacher would hold recitals with everyone's families. I begged my parents to let me skip the recitals because they made me so nervous. My hands would shake and I would stutter. They insisted, though, that performing would help me get over my anxiety through exposure. It sure didn't. The last recital I attended, I was so anxious and my hands were shaking so badly that I couldn't play. I sat there and had a panic attack in front of everyone and then just left to cry. It wasn't like anyone laughed at me or anything, but there was just awkward silence and everybody pretends nothing happened later. Luckily, no one made me attend after that, but I still can't play piano in front of anybody because my hands just shake too much. Story 18. When I just got into college, I came over to my best friend's house to hang out. A friend from his class was there too, but I didn't know her. When I had to leave, he asked me to walk with her because she didn't know the way out of his neighborhood. I thought it'd be a bit awkward, but I had dealt with stuff like that before and figured she would try to make small talk and it'd be okay. I don't know what happened to me that day, but I couldn't look at her in her face, not even in her general direction. The few things she said, I knew I had to give some sort of reply to keep any kind of conversation going, but no combination of thoughts that came to my brain made sense, and I think I straight up ignored her sometimes. At some point, we just kept walking until we reached her parents' car, and that was that. I've been shy most of my life, some times are worse than others, but I don't know why something so mild like walking along with a stranger got me so bad. We're now pretty close friends and all, but she still makes fun of that moment, and I still don't get it. LOL. Story 19. I once did a talent show where I sang a song I wrote for like an R&B a cappella type thing in front of a smattering of kids from all over the state at summer camp. I froze and mumbled the first verse and then walked off stage. By the time I spent an entire slumber party flirting with my cousin's friend who was like a Kmart model or something, and convincing her that I knew about Buddhist philosophy, only to turn her down the next morning because I was going out with a girl that didn't exist. I thought it would be awkward with her being my cousin's friend and her being much hotter than me. I really didn't think the Buddha thing would work. All the time, I put up the devil signs and then wiggled my tongue through it during my graduation walk, thinking I was just innocently praising the devil when everybody thought I was giving signs to a grandma. All the time, I dressed up in skin-tight long johns and nothing else underneath for a superhero costume, and it was, really cold outside during the local youth gathering. All the time, my girlfriend's mom found me handcuffed to the bed. Well, can we just stop now? Yeah. Story 20. Went to a 24-hour diner a few years ago, 9 p.m. on a weeknight. When I was in college, I'd often go there alone after work to study and eat dinner. That night was extra slow, as in, I was the only customer for several hours. I sat there for 2 hours waiting for someone to take my order, but no one ever stopped by my table, though I made pleading eye contact with a couple of servers. Eventually, a server came over and asked me how I was doing. She took my order and left. I was too shy to be rude, point out I'd been there for so long without service, or even let myself be angry since it was my fault for not speaking up sooner. I ate dinner and tipped 30%, as was usual for me. Now, much older and wiser, you'd think I'd be over it? About a month ago, I placed a to-go order at a local food truck. You sit in your car and they bring the food to you. It was busy, lots of other cars were there. When the wait exceeded 45 minutes, I went to the front of the truck to check on my order. They said sorry, they were busy, it'd be out soon. Okay, cool. Only an hour and a half later, I got the food after I checked on the order a second time. They had lost my order and sold out of both the items I had originally ordered. I was really tired and emotionally exhausted from finally facing my fears and saying something, only for it to blow up in my face. But damn, I wanted to eat. She offered me a substitution. I accepted, and Charlie Brown sad walked my way back to my car. 10 minutes later, they brought the food out. I thanked them, apologizing for the confusion on the order. It was only when I got home that I noticed the $20 in my bag. The note apologized for the long wait. I think my order after tipping only came out to $18. So anyway, still working on being comfortable at being assertive, but getting better. Story 21. I'm 35 now, and the trauma from this one keeps it fresh in my mind to this day. I was in second grade sitting in class about 5 minutes before recess when it happened. My seat was in the center of the classroom, and I needed to take a mess, like desperately, and likely for a while leading up to that moment. In any case, I couldn't muster up the courage to interrupt the teacher during lecture and ask to be excused, even minutes away before the bell. Surely it'd be better to just wait it out until the end, even though every inch of my body was telling me otherwise. I must have visibly grown taller when all the mess went out in an instance of pure relief, because it sure felt like it physically elevated me, leaving me sitting in a pile of mess. Even then, I was still too shy to do or say anything about it. It would especially be better now to keep this all to myself, but hey, besides, I'd only need to wait a few more minutes before the bell rang and I could low-key waddle to the bathroom unnoticed, I imagined. Within seconds, a couple of my classmates noticed the smell and announced it to the class. At first, they were looking around, asking who farted, giggling, and whatnot. The smell persisted, which quickly evolved and devolved, I can't decide, the situation into a downright search party, with kids crawling around the floor like bloodhounds zeroing in on their target. All that, paired with me pretending to be a tree at the center of the classroom, oblivious to the goings on around me, but actually wishing this would somehow all end, must have been a sight to behold, I bet. I continued to sit there as the whole class laughed and pointed at me, many of whom were pinching their noses to avoid smelling that odor emanating from the quiet tree. As others retreated to the outdoors, I was intimately getting acquainted with the feelings of absolute shame, embarrassment, and humiliation all wrapped up into one. If I hadn't known these feelings before, I would be an expert in them now. The teacher, realizing the gravity of the situation, immediately called for more help. This came in the form of a school janitor sweeping me away from my desk and carrying me into a bathroom, where he himself washed my back, probably because I was too shell-shocked to think for myself anymore, let alone clean up my own mess. Needless to say, I was sent home for the remainder of the day with my tail between my legs. Story 22. When I sprained my foot, broke a finger, and dislocated another while out running in flip-flops with my dog and didn't want to bug my mom about it. It was probably almost like 10 at night, and I was out on shorts, a tank top, and flip-flops when, well, my dog needed to go outside. So after much debate about changing my outfit and footwear, I just tossed on a light sweater and decided to take him for a walk. After like 10 minutes of walking in 30-ish degree weather, I thought that I'd just run my dog a bit and he'd get tired and want to come in. Well, I slipped on a bit of concrete, fell hard on my foot and hand. I couldn't walk well or put much pressure on it, and my hand wasn't really responding to me wanting to use it, so I ended up limping, dragging, crawling down the sidewalk to my house. Meanwhile, my mom was at her house on a call with someone, and I remembered her telling me not to interrupt her under any circumstances, since it was super important. So cue me over the course of about 15 minutes, dragging my 6-foot, 190-pound self into my house, up my stairs, and into my bathroom where I proceeded to ice my foot, set one finger, and tried to relocate the other. A good 10 minutes later, after I had basically cleaned and took care of most of my injuries, gotta love first aid training, lol. My mom walked into the bathroom to see me slumped against a tub, my hands swollen and my foot equally swollen and red. She screamed, asked what in the fresh frick happened, and I kind of shrugged and said that I fell and didn't want to call for help since it would bug her. Story 23. Oh, Lord, this post brought up a memory I had repressed for several years. When I was 25 or so, I had the worst living nightmare at a house party. The group of guys who lived there were all close with my best friend's husband, and I knew them all pretty well. Despite being desperately shy and introverted, I'm comfortable with this group, so whenever I was in the mood to socialize, I would go to one of their get-togethers or go out with my best friend and her husband. It wasn't unusual for there to be a lot of people at the parties I did not know. The guys were all really gregarious and affable, and each knew a lot of people. No big deal. I would typically just hang around my friend or someone else I knew and just enjoy being around people for a while. For whatever reason I'm still not sure of, I decided that night I would do it. I would break out of my shell and socialize and meet all kinds of new friends. I'd watched my extroverted friends plenty, and I knew I could mimic their behavior. They make it look so easy to socialize with strangers. I'm sure drinks played a part in this thought process. So I wandered out to the garage, and it was going pretty well. A group of about 3 girls around 20 years old I didn't know were getting ready to play a round of beer pong. Social Sally that I am, I jumped right in to be the fourth, and then my brain completely shut down. I didn't know how to speak anymore, and I couldn't think of a single word to say. I just played the entire game without uttering a word. My gosh, it was awful. To make it worse, I was terrible at drinking pong, so it's not like I was wowing anyone with my mysteriously silent pong skills. The game finally ended, and I made a quick escape to a different room, but I still overheard the girls talking about me later to another friend. I didn't hear much, but that girl, weird, didn't say a word, were clear. Great, now I'm the weird girl. I could have cringed at that point and been just fine, but no, that's not the end of it. After hearing them talk about me, I left the room quickly. I'm great at awkwardly siding out of a room, and went to go find my things so I could get out. I'd reached my socializing quota for the whole year. Either my best friend or one of the guys that knew me heard them talking about me, and filled them in that I'm just incredibly shy and that just stepping up and playing with them was a major step for me. That was incredibly thoughtful and kind of them to speak up for me, and it didn't make the girls feel bad for judging too quickly. So here I am, back with my keys and jacket, just saying goodnight to my friends and hosts, and I was almost to the front door in the freedom of solitude Then one of the girls stopped me with 6 words that made me cringe so hard it nearly destroyed me. Can I give you a hug? She didn't ask quietly, but loudly in a patronizing, overly sugary manner. Not maliciously, more like the tone people who aren't used to children use when speaking to them for the first time. I didn't have a choice but to agree because, well, by this point, no one was even talking, just watching us. So I had to hug her all awkwardly and did the little one arm pat thing on the back before I practically ran for the door and out of there. I've not done anything like that since. I just stick to my people. It's been 10 years and my soul still screams at the memory. Story 24. It's literal hell going to middle school, me being the shy guy. Since I'm very sensitive about myself, I often cry when someone screams at me. I try my best not to cry, but fail. When I started elementary school, I wanted to talk to other students and make friends. But due to my sensitivity, I made barely no friends, and since I got pestered during elementary school, but it stopped during in middle school. When someone talks to me, barely no one talks to me. Either I stutter every second or stand there trying to think what to say and nothing comes up. I still go to middle school and me, today, I don't care about other students and avoid people or groups just wanting to be alone. And avoiding conversation, same thing goes when visiting relatives. I have a cold personality, almost always having an emotionless face in school. I hate going to public places since there will be people, obviously. Some months ago, I went to a clinic. They gave me a paper about if I'm depressed with questions to answer. I don't know what they called it. I guess a survey. I have moderate depression, and that was like 8 months ago. And it may have gotten worse since usually when I sleep, I think of ending it all most of the time. And thinking about my past and remembering stupid things I did makes me want to do it more. Story 25. It was my first night away at college, and I was in line to get into the gym for an orientation assembly. I was standing there by myself when I noticed out of the corner of my eye that a person who was standing in a group of people next to me had turned in my direction and put out a hand. I stupidly assumed this person was trying to introduce themselves to me, and I put out my hand ready to receive the dap and say what's up. Just at this moment, the guy turned quickly back around, and I realized it was just a hand motion that I was using to help tell a story. The guy himself ignored me, awkwardly, standing there with my hand out, and the whole group he was telling the story to just kind of awkwardly looked over his shoulders at me, their eyes screaming, "We saw that, LOL." Luckily, at this moment, the line started moving, and I was able to lose myself in the crowd before quickly retreating to my dorm room. Every time I see any of these people on campus, my mind does a quick flashback like, you remember that one time? I bet they do too. Anyway, a year and a half later, I think it's funny, but at that moment, I wanted to disappear. Story 26. One time as a kid, my dad and his girlfriend dumped us off on his girlfriend's friend, who neither me nor my 2 younger sisters had ever been introduced to while they, went out and had fun? I have no idea. I was 12 at the time, and we only got to spend 2 months of the year with our dad. So this was terrible in more ways than one. I had severe social anxiety as a kid, like panic attacks, never talking to anyone, the whole thing. I made a hard 180 around, I guess, age 20, and now you can't hardly shut me up. But until then, I had a hard time even being around people I knew, let alone strangers. My dad left us at that strange woman's house for like 5 whole days. During that time, we were cloistered up with her 3 kids, 2 of whom were attractive teen boys a few years older than me, i.e., the scariest type of other human to me back then. On top of this, the lady had a garden party and invited like 40 people. To make matters worse, my dad's girlfriend kicked this show off by explaining to her friend, in front of me and their whole family, that I was very shy and awkward and sort of weird, and that they shouldn't take my behavior personally. It was like a very personalized hell, though. Story 27. So during college, I had a friend group I was with a lot. We had the majority of the same classes since we were the same major. So we would all go eat in between classes, go to the school bar, take online tests as a group, study together. We even did group projects together. Well, I went to a festival in October, and I saw one of the girls in my school friend group. The girl, however, took a semester off, so I hadn't seen her during the summer or the fall semester. And I normally don't tend to say hi to people that I haven't seen in a while because I dread the day the person looks at me in a confused look wondering who I am. The girl was right next to me in the crowd, and I said, "Hey, I haven't seen you in a while." And she responds saying, "Hey, I remember you. We went to elementary together, right?" I moved states during my high school years, so there was no way I went to elementary with her. But I just proceeded to tell her, we actually went to university. We had a couple of classes together and hung out with so-and-so a lot. And she's saying, "Oh, yeah," with a confused face. And I just stopped talking to her and walked away after a few minutes. Never again. The one time I said hi to someone and not let my shyness and nervousness get the best of me, failed. Story 28. In middle school, I was ultra shy, out of touch with current trends, unpopular, and acted a little weird since I was growing up in a really terrible environment. So it's PE, and we're doing this thing where we have two optional activities to sign up for the rest of the year. With no regard for the actual activities, I make my choice to avoid certain people who picked on me, while coincidentally being near some girls I had crushes on. In my head, I've got grand fantasies of impressing all my crushes simultaneously and entering a new phase of somewhat normal social life. Maybe even hand holding and stuff. 12-year-old me was excited, but it was like something out of a bad sitcom. I had chosen the Pilates unit, and I was the only guy in the entire class. Suddenly, I realized this would draw attention to me, possibly make people think I was kind of a creep. And since I had chosen that class party to chase some crushes, I sort of was, to be honest, and it made me massively self conscious. Then it happened. We're doing human pyramids to change things up. I have no idea how it started, but I'm sitting out because I just can't muster up the courage to physically touch girls that I've been crushing on, but have yet to speak to. I'm sitting there fantasizing a more confident version of myself when one of my crushes appears in my face asking me if I want to join the pyramid. And this just doesn't compute. This is all wrong. This is stuff I fantasize. It doesn't actually happen. I make a non-committal sort of shrug nod, and she hops off to grab the teacher to let them know I've changed my mind. They come back. This time my crush has brought her friend, another hot girl I'd never spoken to. So now there's three people trying to talk to me like a normal human being. Crush says you want to join the pyramid, says my gym teacher. No, I say in a moment of absolute panic. My crush gives me a disappointed side eye and sighs. We never speak again. I felt like I had let everyone down and spent the next decade rationalizing that they were probably actually glad they didn't have to touch me in the end. And if you can relate to any one of these stories, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.